Obi Spencer, Brandon Kay, and Kyle Krieger. Scott is out this week, so we'll try not to burn the place down along the way. So let's jump right into it. We got had the NFL division round this past weekend. Games themselves were a bit of a letdown compared to Wild Card weekend. But gentlemen, how are we all doing today?
I'm certainly better than Giants fans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, that's,
man.
It's Scott. He was just, so upset from his loss that he didn't he couldn't bear to be on the show today.
Yeah, so
we're just kidding.
Yeah, we'll start right now with
the Giants. I was going to say, if we're going to be making fun of Giants fans, let's start with that game. As the resident Eagles fan.
Let's start with that game. And the Giants go right where they belong after that game. The Vikings were frauds all season. Bye-bye. Now the real teams left can settle out the Final Four.
I'd say that the Giants were a real team. It's just they were definitely one on the lower end of that group. And the Eagles the Eagles have been a tale of two teams all season, in that they're either literally a top 3 team or they're one of the worst teams in the league. And that all depends on how Jalen Hurts plays. And he had a good game, so they had one of their they were a tougher team to beat. So yeah, they ran into a nigh unstoppable Jalen Hurts in a very hostile stadium. So it kind of went as expected, and judging by my picks, the first 2 games went according to plan. Second 2, not so much. But yeah, it's a shame that the Giants got booted this early, but they drew the wrong opponent for sure.
So yeah, I agree with part of what Kyle says, and then I'm going to defend the Eagles a little bit. So I think that the Giants were a legitimate playoff team in this season, but I also think that Minnesota was frauds, and
they were.
The Eagles were not. Look, there's been 3 teams in both the AFC and the NFC that pretty much from the halfway point of the season you thought could do it. From the moment they got CMC over in San Francisco, and Eagles and Cowboys, we'll get into that game. And then there was the Bills and Cincinnati. We'll get into that game. And then, of course, Kansas City. So the Giants, I felt, got a lot of hype nationally for a big game against a really bad defense. And then there was this pretend maybe Jalen Hurts' shoulders hurt that bad when he played in a pretty much meaningless game for a win against the Giants a few weeks earlier. And I was like, come on. I couldn't believe the amount of hype that the Giants had a chance in this game. And I think the Eagles players couldn't believe the hype that the Giants had a chance in the game. And they went out there, and from the moment they failed on that 4th down conversion, the game was over. Scott talked a lot, and I'm using Scott to represent all Giants fans as, hey, all they have to do is set the tone. You can set the tone against the team you're even with. But the Eagles are a juggernaut this year. They're going to play another juggernaut. They went out and they reminded people that the Giants were a good team, a respectable team. I think if you're a Giants fan and you were shocked by the outcome of your season, and this is a season to celebrate because you so exceeded expectations. But if you were not going to beat that Eagles team with a 80% healthy Hurts, he claimed he was only 75. I don't know what it was, but it was more than enough. He can throw the ball just fine, and the weapons are more than plentiful. And they went out and they did what they were supposed to do, which was beat a non-top tier team when you are in that elite top tier of teams this season in the NFL.
Indeed.
Yeah, I thought it was
big thing. Go ahead, man.
No, I was gonna say I thought it was interesting too with this team, because for a team like that, the kind of the whole thing is you want to go into the playoffs on a streak with momentum. They didn't go into that playoff game against Minnesota with a lot of momentum. They were 3-6-1 after that great start they had. So they didn't kind of tumble into the playoffs, but they didn't come in bursting hot into the playoffs. They had the nice win, the nice 2 wins against Indianapolis and Washington to kind of get into that playoff mindset, that playoff mode. And like they said, they went up against a team that pretty much were frauds. And we just went through those teams, basically the 6 teams, the 3 per conference. And then there was kind of that Minnesota, because they had the great record like the rest of the team. But then you look at all the analytics and the numbers and stuff like that, and it's like, well, can we really hold them to that same, level of greatness, at least up until that point? And we saw what happened in the playoffs. It's very funny. Some teams, you kind of just know what they are after 1 or 2 games, 3 games maybe. It feels like we didn't know what this Vikings team was until the playoff game. And that it was a whole season. And I'm still sitting there like week 16, 17, 18. It's like, what is this Vikings team? Because I didn't know. I don't know. And we saw what they had, played in the play. Terrible play defense. And it's Justin Jefferson or bust. And we saw that. And we could talk about that last play about Kirk Cousins throwing it short, not even looking at Justin Jefferson, but it doesn't matter. They were just not a good team. And then the Giants come up against this Eagles team where, it's kind of this smoke and mirrors hype where first off, it's a divisional game, so it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. You had the playoff win. They're off rest, which depends maybe or not, depending. It's each year the or rust, it changes. It's not a consistent thing every year. And I thought the Giants would have played a better game in terms of showing up and just kind of keeping it close. But we saw it. I mean, that Eagles team, rest. There was rust at all. There was just all rest. They came out as if they had been playing hot, weeks consistently without Jalen Hurts injury. That's that he's coming off an injury as well.
Yeah,
and I thought
he looked pretty healthy the other night.
And I thought the Eagles did more than what they should have, because I thought it was going to be a closer game. I thought it was going to be one of those like 23-20, 24-21 really divisional games, but it wasn't. It was a complete beatdown.
I figured that it would be. The other thing about this game was it wasn't just Hurts. The defense, the Eagles defense was just all over Jones. It was you just heard Fletcher over and over again. Just Fletcher Cox all over the place. And just they didn't, and because I was driving back from the Seton Hall game earlier that day. We'll get more on that towards the end of the show. But driving back from that game, so I'm hearing I'm listening to the Giants broadcast for the first part of the drive, and then flipping over to the Eagles radio broadcast for the rest of the drive, and just the Eagles broadcasters are going on. I'm just, he looks pretty healthy, right as he was slinging it for the second touchdown, and just the Giants just really didn't have anything. They couldn't get anything going. They couldn't get any kind of rhythm. The defense did what the Eagles defense has done for most of the season, and really, if anybody was setting the tone, it was the Eagles defense. I thought set the tone early on.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was ain't gonna be doing much on offense when when you're getting hit that many times.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, as much as we say about the Eagles offense, their defense is definitely one of the top ones in the league. So it really is a combination of like A rank groups on both sides of the field. So it's like I said, the Giants are a great team. They just drew probably the worst opponent early on. And as mentioned before, there were some things, as you said, it is tough to beat a team 3 times in a row in a season. Hurts is hurt. So it's like there was a non-zero chance, like probably more of a chance in this game than at the other ones in the season. But the Eagles are still a top team this year, and as such, that's what happens.
The Giants also hadn't. It isn't just the division dominance. Yes, things happen weird things happen when you play a team for a third time. But I think it's been about 10 years since the Giants have even won in the Link. I don't remember the exact year, but I want to say
it was 10 years.
About 10 years. It has been 10 years since they won down in the Link, and it's a tough place to play. So this and the Giants were yes, the Vikings were frauds. Yes, so the Giants took advantage of a team, caught a team napping that was kind of overrated for the course of the season. But the Giants were playing with house money by this point. So there's also no shame in the Giants. Yes, the score was a little lopsided, but for what was expected of the Giants coming into this season, this is more than a successful season for them, and hopefully something for them to build off next year. One thing's for sure, Daniel Jones has absolutely proven himself worthy of a solid extension. The price just went way up for them to keep him. I do think that the Giants will ultimately come to a deal with him, and if they don't, they'll franchise him and take another year to figure it out.
He's earned his paycheck.
He has absolutely earned his paycheck with this playoff run. So we have the Eagles taking on the 49ers next week, but we will get back to that with the second game from Saturday, Jaguars Chiefs, which that game was a
like with the Giants. It was tough.
Yeah, that kind of ended up to be what we expected as well.
Yeah. Jaguars almost pulled off another comeback. Unfortunately, this time the defense actually, acted like a defense and was able to stop it with a very key interception near the end of the game. And it's like you can pull magic from that. You can pull out some magic a whole bunch of times in a season, but you knew that we all knew that the Jaguars' magic was probably going to run out if they were stuck in that situation again. And they were stuck in that situation again, and they just this time they just weren't able to pull it off. Though, like with the Giants, great season, great job getting into the playoffs. Had that historical comeback against the Chargers, definitely gave us some memorable moments, but the better team definitely won.
Look,
yeah, I could not believe it. To me, as an Eagles fan, the Eagles' biggest weakness is backup quarterback. Look, we saw the Cowboys win a bunch of games with their backup quarterback. Eagles lost 2 games. Kansas City won this game with their backup quarterback, right? We knew that there was a young, possibly future stud quarterback on the other side going against the guy who we consider the best guy in the NFL right now, and he got knocked out. So now you have your puncher's chance. You have everything you want. And Chad Henne comes in and goes 98 yards for a touchdown. At that point, to me, the game was over. I did not.
Yep.
That was such a gut punch to be like, all right, this is exactly where we want them. This is on the 2-yard line without the best guy on their team. And Andy Reid and backup quarterbacks did it again. I was shocked they let Mahomes back in because I thought they didn't even need him at that point. I thought Henne was good enough to win that game and would have been. And it was just that to me was the end of the game because I felt like when you're the defense, you're like, we can't even stop Chad Henne. What are we going to do when this other guy comes back in? And that was it. And then that offense has 2 runners in Pachenko and McKinnick. Pachenko, he wasn't even supposed to be the guy. RU player. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously I think going into the weekend, that was the game that I think was easiest to pick. And they didn't do enough. They're obviously, though the Jaguars are the team to watch next year, they're going to have the young quarterback who's probably underpaid. They're going to get him some more weapons, I suspect, in this offseason. Those teams that are overpaying for quarterbacks who have to let a wide receiver or a running back go, well, probably not running back because they got at the end. They're going to end up there. And that, I think, is going to be the team that's going to be the sexy pick next year for all the right reasons. We'll see what it turns out to be, but not this season. This is not their year at all. Yeah. Again, another team that far played expectations, and their fans should be ecstatic. And wasn't there that television show where the guy was the Jacksonville Jaguar fan? He's all excited. The bad place or the good place, I think it was, had the Jacksonville Jaguar fan on it.
Yeah, I think this was definitely, I think, the easiest game to maybe not predict in terms of gameplay, but just I think it was kind of a no-brainer that the Chiefs were going to win. I think they are, and Patrick Mahomes is hell-bent on getting back to and winning the Super Bowl after what they had looked like in their past and their previous Super Bowl appearance. So I thought, even with the Mahomes injury to the Henny point, anything is possible, but I don't know if this case he was going to be able to sustain the rest of the game. Because look, I think that Jacksonville team, like it's scrappy. I think overall Jacksonville might have a better defense. I just think obviously the Chiefs are the Chiefs, especially offensively, and just with everything going on, I thought the Chiefs were going to be able to overcome Jacksonville, especially when Mahomes came back. And like, I thought he broke his ankle, man. Like it looked like, I don't know if he's got some type of, adamantium, Wolverine metal in him or something like that. But he seems to be pretty close to invincible, knock on wood. And we saw him come back and look fairly kind of like Mahomes. I would say it didn't look, he didn't look as healthy almost as Jalen did when he came back in the playoff game. But I thought Mahomes is just that super, just natural, otherworldly talent that he was just able to will plays, will touchdowns. We saw that one, the one-footed jump of a touchdown throw there at the end, towards the end of the game. And I think to the Jacksonville point, I think they're going to be, especially in that division. I mean, it would be sacrilegious to pick against them in that division. I think, especially going to next year, I think they need a couple of defensive backs and a couple, maybe another receiver or two. But I like that roster a lot. I love Doug Peterson as their coach for that quarterback pairing. I think that's fantastic. And I don't want to say the Jaguars kind of had that also a bit of a house money, kind of a situation where that's the Kansas City effing Chiefs, man. Like I said, I just think they're hell bent on getting back to the Super Bowl and winning. But Jacksonville showed up, played a scrappy game, and made it, Mahomes injury or not, made it a close game.
Yeah, the game that we got, as far as results, I was expecting the reverse. I was expecting a score like what we got from the Kansas City Jaguars game. I was expecting that to be the Giants-Eagles game. And the 38-7 blowout was what I was expecting the Chiefs-Jaguars game to be. So for the fact that they hung in it as long as they did and really was just a last-minute touchdown and backdoor cover, I agree that Henny coming in and doing the 98-yard drive definitely was a backbreaker. But you could not leave him in for the rest of the game. There have been multiple times where Andy Reid teams have blown to double-digit leads in playoff games, 20-point plus leads. So they were not messing around with that. Anything short of, Mahomes not being able to walk, he was coming back in that game, and he'll be playing next week for the same reason. Will he be effective? Against the Bengals, who are a much better team than Jacksonville, that I'm not so sure about. I mean, depends how it goes this week, but that was the kind of injury that in the regular season he'd probably be out for 3-4 games. But he's fun, whether it's a break, a bad sprain. I didn't see an official diagnosis. I think it was just a really bad
high ankle sprain.
I think was what was in there.
Yep, high ankle sprain.
High ankle sprain. Yeah, high ankle sprain normally keeps a player out for a month. But he's gonna play through it. So let's. Yeah.
I just one more note about that game. Heading into that game, 30-6. That is Andy Reid's record with when he has a bye. I mean, when this guy has time to prep for your
Mhm.
team, he's good. He's good when he has that kind of time.
Funny you should mention Andy Reid. You have Andy Reid and Doug Peterson, both former Eagles coaches.
Yes. And I mean, Doug Peterson is directly on the Andy Reid coaching tree. I mean, he was Andy Reid's first quarterback when he was in Philly, and he was Andy Reid's assistant when he went over to Kansas City. So, like, all Doug Peterson and Andy Reid go very far back. I'm sure if there's anyone Andy Reid wants to lose to in hindsight, it's Doug Reid, but ahead of time, it's not Doug Reid. I think he's the guy you don't want to lose to at all until you do. You're like, yeah, this is my friend.
So we could just say that the final out of the final 3 teams, 3 of them are Eagles coaches. Final 4 teams. So
So we'll go into Sunday's game. We will start with the first game for Sunday, the Bills Bengals rematch. The Sunday games were a big shocker for me.
it's where we all lost our picks. For most of us, it's where most of us lost our picks. Yeah, and Bengals Bills was a heartbreaker, just because that was, as I mentioned before, that was the feel good story of the entire playoffs. It's like we all have our favorite teams, but unless you were a Bengals fan, it was very hard to root against the Bills. You could pick them to lose, fine, but inside, most people were rooting for them, mainly because for 2 reasons: Hamlin, and the fact that they were one of the teams that has had a history of failure in the playoffs. So sometimes it's nice to see an underdog finally catch it. But unfortunately, this one was it wasn't as close as expected, and yeah, it's unfortunate for the Bills, but Bengals came in swinging, and they did not let up the entire game. So it's unfortunate because I think the Bills were an overall better team, but they did not play it. They did not play like the better team on Sunday. Like all those, how can I put it? They didn't play to the level that they had shown throughout the season. And honestly, a ton of credit goes to the Bengals. They came to play. They came to play. They did exactly what they needed to do, and well, they came out with a win on a neutral field in snow. So good on them.
Obi?
I did have Cincinnati winning this game, and I was rooting for Cincinnati. So I guess I'm a cold-hearted individual.
I was rooting for Cincinnati too. That's why I was like sitting here, like, oh man.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm a terrible person
heartless,
now. Yeah.
Heartless bastards.
So I mean, the first thing we need to point out, and nobody wants to point this out, and when Skip, Bayless even remotely mentioned it, it became a problem. Look, Hamlin was their 3rd leading tackler on this team. Losing him was a big deal on the field, as well as emotionally. Where did it put them? Up, down, in and out. That's number one. And people weren't talking about it, but the key factor to me in that game became the snow. So it is a little known fact. And if you watch football enough, and if you think of this and you put this in your head and then you watch football games, you will realize it is true. It is easier to pass block in the snow than to run block in the snow, because defensive ends cannot power around the corners. They fall on their faces. And Cincinnati's defense, because of who they were going against, were already making an effort not to rush up past the quarterback. So they were more controlled in their passing, in their rushing. And meanwhile, Buffalo was going for the sacks to get to Burrow against the weak line, and they were easy to move around for that depleted line. And it just, the snow broke the game in a way that I don't think you think about happening. And as soon as the game, it just worked out. They were able to dominate the lines because I think of the strategies that the two teams had and their effectiveness in the snow. That and Joe Burrow is just icy. He's icy. He is just, against Baltimore. Baltimore said, you're not going to beat us deep. You're going to have to throw it short. And unlike Mahomes, who I love, who will fight it out and run around till he finds that deep pass, Burrow was like, no, I will throw it 5 yards, 2 plays in a row, every play for 13 plays down the field until some BS non-touchdown call. Like, he's just going to go methodical if you give him methodical, and if you give him a chance to throw it deep to Jason, he'll do that. So he was totally under control, and I think that factor played in. And Allen is a little bit more of an emotional player, and I think that showed. I just think that Cincinnati, though, is the better team. I think they've been underplayed all season. As soon as they didn't have a Super Bowl hangover, I think that the respect didn't run to them the way I thought it should have. Like, I understand when were they fluky to get in? They lost the Super Bowl hangover, here you come. But midway through the season, it was obvious that they were going to be fighting for their division, and then Lamar got hurt, so they easily won their division. Then they got all sorts of disrespect. You know, they didn't get a coin flip for this game. They had to travel the other game. Meanwhile, a game they were winning, they don't get on their record. They did. But the bottom line is they look better on both sides of the ball on the front of the game. Those defense and offensive lines totally dominate. Now, will they dominate in good weather against an interior pass rush team versus an exterior pass rush team? I'll make my prediction at the end of the show if you're asking me to, but it's going to be a different game for sure.
Brandon?
I think with this Bengals team, I also agree that they are the better team. We saw what happened through the course of the season. Cincy getting off to a bit of a slow start. Then they played the Jets, and then we're on this great win streak, not win streak, but just this great streak of football ever since. And I think it's very interesting because we'll talk about the matchup against Kansas City in a minute, but I think you would take Kelsey first, then Chase second, but then the rest of the receiving options for the two are mostly Bengals receivers. So I think we are really almost underestimating the talent that is on this Bengals offense, and we saw their line protect Burrow. We only got pressured, I think, 8 or 9 times. I think it was only sacked once, and didn't have a single turnover, no interceptions. I mean, it's just what we've seen Joe Burrow do, even going back to last year's playoff run, just in these 2 playoff runs, and he's just been cool, man. Like, it's just nothing phases him. And he goes into a hostile environment up against a team that really can, you just mentioned it, Von Miller. That was another huge loss from earlier in the season. So the Buffalo defense had been depleted since that injury specifically. We know that the Hamlin situation. But what's interesting about this Bills team, let's just say from an offensive standpoint, with the Bengals too. The Bengals can win in different ways. The Bills cannot win in different ways. The Bills, 100% offensive attack is Josh Allen running the ball first as his option, and then he looks out to Stephon Diggs and a couple of these receivers. We saw the regression in Josh Allen's turnovers, in his rocky consistency of play. Can that be attributed to the departure of Brian Daboll to the Giants? I think it is absolutely looking towards that to be the case. And we'll see how that continues to play out. But it's very interesting because look at every single, I heard this today, look at every single quarterback and head coach pairing that has won a Super Bowl. Right. They won within 5 years. This was the 5th year of the pairing between Sean McDermott and Josh Allen. So history says that if it's not now, then it's not going to work, which means either McDermott or I don't think it's McDermott. Well, let's just say offensive coaching. Either it's an offensive coaching issue or it's a Josh Allen issue, or it is a mix of both. But I think something needs to be done, and it's very interesting between these 4 teams that had just lost in Jacksonville, Dallas, the Giants, and the Bills. I think the Bills have the most questions going into this offseason than the rest of those 3 teams. And I think we're going to get a great AFC Championship game. I don't think it'll be the fireworks that we saw the Chiefs Bills AFC Championship game. But it could be that. And I think it's going to be a great game. We get another Burrow-Mahomes matchup. And it's shaping up to be, especially as these 3 teams, the Bills, Bengals, Chiefs, as these 3 teams' trajectories currently go, Mahomes and Burrow are cemented as this generation, Mahomes, Brady, Manning, where those are the 2 quarterbacks in the AFC. But then you have a guy like Big Ben, who's trying to get through. He'll get to a Super Bowl too. He happened to win 2 Super Bowls. And we'll see how the rest of this Bills and Josh Allen's career plays out. But I just think the similarities are very interesting. But the Bills have a lot of questions going into next season.
Yeah, and the AFC is stacked with quarterbacks going forward. You got
we could have another one coming over if Aaron Rodgers happens to join the Jets, which
please no. The Favre mess wasn't bad enough the first time around. I do not want to do that again. But we're
going to have
dual quarterbacks in the AFC.
We're going to have a lot of conversation about Aaron Rodgers and his salary, as well as Mahomes' salary. But I have some notes that may or may not get to this week, but will be fun for the
that seems like that's probably more of an off-season topic. But
you got the spreadsheet going.
I found somebody else's spreadsheet.
Spreadsheet
really
strikes again.
They call you the king of the spreadsheets. You got them all printed out on your bed.
But we got Mahomes, we got Allen, we have Burrow. Then you have the next ones already coming up with Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert. That's
Brock. Possibly Lamar is still in there.
So Lamar is in the conversation. We'll see what happens with coming with what team he ends up with and recovering from whatever injury situation. We will see where he is in that pecking order going forward. But Lamar Jackson absolutely is in that conversation as well. So that's 6 quarterbacks in the AFC right there that are all under 30, all in the AFC.
Here's what I'm going to say, the flip side of what we just saw with these teams and what we're seeing going forward. Of these 4 quarterbacks who are left, only one of them has a big salary. And that's what this spread. The last guy to win, taking up more than 18% of his cap, was Steve Young in 1993 when the cap first started, and the highest guy to make it with 18% to the Super Bowl and lost was Manning in his absolute prime when he lost to Breeze. Even
what about Stafford last year?
When Manning was on the Broncos,
was only 20. Was like 12 or 13.
Really?
When Manning was on the Broncos, how much was he in comparison to the rest of the?
When Manning was on the Broncos, the year that he won, he was at 14%, only making
14. Okay,
only $17 million against the cap. The year he won, the year he won it was 12 because the cap went up. The year he lost, it was 14 with the Broncos. So these guys are getting all this money. This is the difference between being a $30 million quarterback versus a $40 million quarterback. Look, we're about to get to the Cowboy game, and a lot of people are going to say things. And I wanted to go last because I wanted to defend Dak a little bit. But the one thing that Dak has done wrong is the salary he took, and it's only getting worse last year.
Yeah.
Because to me, the biggest thing that happened on that field was Amari Cooper wasn't on that field. And he had one guy to go to and one guy he trusted when things got tough. He threw 2 horrible passes to him, one that was intercepted, another one in coverage to CeeDee Lamb being covered by Warner while T.Y. Hilton was wide open. But it had been Amari Cooper running the same route. It would have been much better because it was Amari Cooper anyway. And he would have trusted him. So all these quarterbacks
Nobody watched Cleveland this year, but Cooper had a really great year, actually.
Yeah, because he's a really good wide receiver.
Yeah.
When he came out of school, they said this is the best route runner we've ever seen. He was good a little bit in Oakland or LA or Las Vegas, whatever they were at the time, till he got sick of it. Came to Dallas, was fantastic. And he didn't get sick of being in Dallas. They got sick of the money because they had it all tied up in their second best running back and their quarterback, who's now about to go from 19 against the cap to 49. The Dallas's windows is over. It's closed. Who's going to be able to play for them? Absolutely. They're going to lose Parsons. I mean,
yeah. One last point on the Bills game, and then we'll move on to the Cowboys San Francisco game. Just one more point I wanted to make was that I think that the emotional toll of the Hamlin situation caught up to the Bills this week. You could tell Allen's play has been erratic. Everything the Bills wanted going into this game happened. You had the game at home. Not only did you have the game at home, which was missed in all of those coin flip neutral site scenarios. But they had the game at home. They had the game in a snow globe, which was exactly what you want if you're a Buffalo fan. Although the Bengals are also a northern team. It's not like you're playing
Miami.
a team like Miami or Indianapolis who plays in the dome.
And they didn't even play that great against Miami. Let's not forget that either.
Nope. No, they did not. No, you're absolutely right.
But it's not but the thing going in was, it's going to be snowing in Buffalo. Bengals don't have much of a chance. Really? Like, I admit that and I have egg on my face. You can go back and look at my picks video where I thought that the emotional energy from this would have taken the Bills higher, but I think it did the opposite. We see it did the opposite, where it just wiped them out. I think they've been going on pure adrenaline for the past few weeks, and they just crashed. And there are big questions about the Bills. That 5-year stat of the head coach and quarterback pairing that they win within the first 5 years. So the Bills are just snake bit. Like, yes, I'm a Jets fan, so it's a division rival, but I don't have the same animosity for them like I do for the evil empire up in New England. The Death Star or even Miami.
I was going to say, I don't even think it's as bad as Miami.
No, I feel for the Bills. This team is just snake bit. They win 18 years without a playoff game. They lost they went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost all of them. You have 13 seconds from last year. You had DeMar Hamlin this year. Just again and again and again. This team is just snake bit. I feel for them.
Wasn't Vontae Davis who just retired at halftime a few years ago?
Yes.
So it's just like
it was long. It was longer than that. I mean, they were still bad then, but it was.
But this is. It's just the Bills, man. They're the Buffalo Bills. I feel that. It really is in terms of divisional rivalry. I agree. It's Patriots are the worst. Then I would throw Miami probably second, and then Buffalo third. Even with Buffalo being better than Miami these last 5 years, 6, whatever.
Miami's just
a lot.
Miami's just annoying because the Dolphins fans that are around are kind of like Cowboys light, where they talk about the history and 14-0, like it actually matters, and it wasn't 50 years ago. You're talking about Super Bowls from 50 years ago. You're no better than the Jets at this point.
Then again, how many of those Miami fans were influenced by Ace Ventura back in the 90s?
Yeah, but the funny thing is, though, the Jets Super Bowl is still 100 times more memorable than the Dolphins winning, even with their undefeated season.
Mm-hmm.
Because you care about more the undefeated season rather than the fact that they simply won that Super Bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Miami just the existence of Miami is annoying. I agree.
Yeah.
You mentioned annoyance.
Without the Super Bowls, they were still consistently good for 25 years. I will give them that. But the last 25 years, and post Marino, they haven't been.
Yeah,
pretty much since. Not exactly, but close to the time that Jimmy Johnson goes from the Cowboys to the Dolphins. Both franchises have gone like this.
I was going to say, it's like you mentioned annoying things about fan bases. The undefeated season is possibly one of the most annoying things. Like whenever someone gets close, they basically drag out that entire team for their
Mercury Morris
interviews just for them to say it's like, nah, we're the only undefeated team, and lo and behold they lose. It's like
Yeah.
the only thing that would have been worse is if Tom Brady's Patriots got it.
Yeah,
was-
yeah. And then the funny thing is, after there's a team every year that starts out undefeated, the minute that team loses, the whole 72 Dolphins team, they're like, oh man, they didn't have a chance. We weren't worried. They do a segment on them every year once that last
Mercury
undefeated
Morris
team
comes out from whatever
every
rock
season.
he's hiding under and talks smack and then goes back into hiding every single year.
Yep.
It's like the only reason that people could even think about wanting the Patriots to have an undefeated season that year was just to make the Miami Dolphins old players shut up.
As much as I hate the Patriots, I was also I admit
it would have been
I
the silver lining.
kind of had a thought of like, at least like this will stink, but at least the 72 Dolphins can finally shut up. But I was still happy the Giants beat them. But but I admit I had that same thought where I was like, at least if this happens, the 72 Dolphins will finally shut up. But
yeah, but then at that point we'd have Tom Brady and Bill Belichick for the rest of their lives, being like,
we have that anyway, though.
Yeah, but
not as bad.
I know you're right. Yeah, you're right.
You're right. Worse.
You're right.
It could have been worse.
They just did something that wouldn't have moved it any further. The needle that it was just so far gone. Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point.
Just far up their own butts.
Yeah. So we'll move on now to the final game, the Cowboys and 49ers division game. Where it was all field goals for the first 3 quarters.
But yeah, we could mention the field goal woes and whatnot, but on a scale of 1 to Pete Carroll, how bad was that last play?
I think that is an overblown situation. They had to try something different, and it failed. I mean, if they had just done a regular hook and ladder and then the fumble after 7 laterals that gets recovered, look, they tried to do something different to give themselves a shot, and it failed. I think it was better than just trying a regular hook and lateral. It failed, but there was some idea behind it. You can see that he's supposed to then lateral it behind the guy who's got 3 offensive linemen coming with him, and then if Zeke isn't attacked, then Zeke has free run to get behind there. Zeke gets tackled. It's a
It's a situation.
It's a situation play, but I think it's just as good as any other situation play because they weren't close enough to do the actual Hail Mary. Which brings me to why I've come to defend Dak, because that whole team.
Of course, you can't do a Hail Mary when you have your running back blocking for you.
Right, but you can't do a Hail Mary 70 yards. Twice, Dalton Schultz messes up. He doesn't drive out of bounds to stop the clock, and then he's not paying attention, so he doesn't get his foot down. Granted, Dak did have 2 interceptions, one of them horrible in the red zone, which they were going for because their kicker missed a kick, and they had no faith in their kicker to kick a field goal in a super tight, close game. Again, Dak did have 2 interceptions, though. As I mentioned before, they have one weapon for him because Pollard goes down. But you know what? He did throw 2 interceptions. So I'm like, first of all, I want to congratulate us by not putting this into our first team because everybody did it. Like this was the best game this was the closest game. And as an Eagle fan, you know what my takeaway was? They bled. Like the 49ers can bleed. This all stud defense can be broken because I felt like if there was 2 good wide receivers and a tight end, there could have been some scoring. And Brock Purdy is a 7th-round rookie quarterback. When you put that kind of defense, which the Eagles have, against him, he made a huge mistake, almost didn't get that field goal. And if that play was done on the road, I bet you that clock runs out. Oops. We're going to wait till it hits the ground, and we're sure it hits the ground. So, I'm watching that game from an Eagles perspective going, that's a very good team, but it's not an unbeatable team.
Yeah.
They got some weaknesses at their quarterback. And when you have the team that had the most sacks in the league, they might be as successful against that quarterback as the team that had the most pressures in the league. And just, the death that Dak is getting for losing to a better team, a team that many people called the best team in the NFL since the moment they got CMC, just bothered me today. Like, let's congratulate the 49ers for being the team we thought they were, and congratulate the Cowboys for being this good in a season that the NFC East was supposed to be ranked, garbage. Instead, they had three teams playing, one of them against a team that some people say is the best in the NFL. So I got more good stuff about Dak, but I also understand that Dak did have a bad game, and I'm going to move on.
Yeah.
All right. Brandon?
Even then, both defenses played out of their damn minds.
Yeah.
The thing with Dak is it's not just the loss. It's how he looked in the loss. It's that he played so great last week. It's the inconsistency. It's the whole picture that is Dak Prescott that is being slammed. It's not just yesterday's events and his play, individually, but I think the 49ers. The 49ers were the better team. I think they have kind of the same way with the Bengals. They have more ways to win. Yeah, I trust, even forgetting Brock Purdy as a core, I just trust the 49ers not to turn the ball over as much as I trusted the Cowboys to turn the ball over in such crucial times, which we saw happen. So again, it's just another kind of par for the course thing with the Cowboys and Dak, and it's just it's hard to shake the moment, the stigma of that's what he is. That's who they are as a team. That's the coaching and stuff like that. And going back to the last play with Zeke, I wouldn't compare it to the Pete Carroll play. I would compare it even more so to the Vikings last play, not throwing it to Justin Jefferson. I think that's more of an equal comparison. But I would even say that the Vikings play would be worse, just because if that Cowboys play happened to work out and they did get a good completion, a lot of things were to happen to even put themselves in a position to win. I think if Minnesota converts, they're able to go down and do something.
Yeah.
So I think situationally it's different. Too many X factors in the Cowboys situation. It's just.
I think the Cowboys play last year was worse. Like when Dak ran out scrambled, running out the clock. I think that was worse than this.
Yeah, I think another thing that really we have to keep an eye out for is any type of coaching change, because we heard last week Jerry Jones. We're not going to get a kicker. We don't need a kicker. We have all the faith in the world. I put my life in the line of Brett Maher. And 2 days later signs a kicker. Even though it was to the practice squad, you signed a kicker. So there had to have been some kind of doubt or just something for you to make that move in general. And then we hear him after this game. We're totally cool with Mike McCarthy. No change whatsoever. That Mike's our guy. Can we trust Jerry Jones' word? I don't know. And this is another year of impatience as an owner. Another Cowboy postseason failure. I don't know. I said the Bills have probably the most questions going into this offseason out of these last four teams that have just lost, but Dallas sure is second.
I think.
But aside from, go ahead, Obi.
I agree with you on the coach, because the other thing to note, the drive that the touchdown did occur on, there was 2 penalties and a bad tackle. If Diggs puts his head up and watches where he's going, he hits that ball and Kittle doesn't catch it. It doesn't even have to be a hard hit, because Kittle's hands are out, but his head is down, and he's just trying to get in the way. 2 penalties on that drive that kept it alive. We saw the Cowboys' discipline fall apart there. Like I mentioned, final drive, there was 2 bad plays by Dalton Schultz, who is essentially their second best wide receiver. He doesn't turn upfield when he gets knocked out of bounds, not stopping the clock. And he does. I've seen Dalton Schultz make way more catches that are way harder than that to get 2 feet down. He did not pay attention on the biggest play of the game to get his 2 feet down. So to me, a lot of it is coaching. There was the lack of calling the timeout before the 2-minute drill. Like,
Clock management is terrible.
Clock management. I don't know if there's truly a coach out there that can, as the defender of Dak, he's about to be $49 million.
Sean Payton. Sean Payton.
I don't even know if Sean Payton can do it, because where is the other weapon coming from? Like, I need another weapon on the outside if I'm going to try to keep up with the 49ers, who are probably going to improve at quarterback if they don't even do anything, with the Eagles, with whatever might end up being in LA if their quarterback situation comes back.
They have to draft one. They have to draft a receiver. That's it.
Yeah. But drafting a receiver does not give you a receiver who is ready to play in a playoff game as your number 2 wide receiver next year. That's what the concern is. You need a guy who you're not high enough in the draft to do that.
Yeah. It's very rare for a rookie receiver to come in like Jamar Chase and just be
but you're not asking. But they asked Jamar Chase to be the number 1 option on when he was drafted on a terrible team,
and with a quarterback that he already had chemistry with since they went to college together. So you need that kind of special situation in order for somebody to have that, for a receiver to have that kind of immediate impact.
Yeah, but that guy wouldn't come in and overtake CD Lamb in the depth chart. So he'd come in as the number 2 at the very, the most. And you still have, Dolph Schultz had a lot of kind of mental errors, we'll call them, yesterday. But he's still more than a great tight end. And they have talent. I just think they need and like we said before, the loss of Amari Cooper is way more obvious than I think a lot of people want to admit or even realize.
Yeah. I mean, I think we agree on what they need. I would disagree with you on how they're going to get it, and I am concerned about salary cap situation. But I think we agree that you need that number 2 wide receiver. Now, I'm not positive, but I think from an X's and O's perspective, this is that the number 2 wide receiver position is actually a harder position to play than the number 1 wide receiver. I believe, because they have more they have to learn, more they have to do. I'm not positive, but I think it might be a mentally more difficult position to pick up in your rookie year with the speeds that the NFL produces. I'm not positive. We'd love to. We had a nice insider for that one.
Yeah, and also regarding the coaching, unless Dallas backs up the Brinks truck for Sean Payton, and they might, who are you getting that's better? If you swing and miss on that, then who else can you get that's better than McCarthy? I'm not really sure. Like, I don't know what coach would be available aside from Sean Payton that would get anything better out of that.
That's fair. But then you have to ask yourselves, okay, let's say Dallas, we would assume for a wild card minimum, are getting to the playoffs next year. Do we expect in 1 year's time that all of these disciplinary coaching, clock management questions are gone? Like, do they magically become like super buttoned up, super on top of every microscopic detail that needs to be?
I don't think so.
No. So then you're exactly where you are. So then if you're going to stay that, you have to do something with the roster. You have to get another receiver. You're going to have to get another running back, because Zeke by himself is not the answer, and Tony Pollard can't be your all around number 1 workhorse running back. So they have. I just think they have a lot of issues.
I'm not sure what Zeke's contract situation is, but I want to say that they might be able to get out from under that deal and get some cap savings if they cut him. So if they're able to do that, there's some cap savings there that they could turn around and sign a receiver. You can draft another running back to replace Zeke. I'm guessing Obi's looking up the contract right now.
Yeah, so it's a base of 10 with a cap hit of 14 and a dead cap of 6. So you can drop him for 6 this year if you cut him, if he doesn't want to restructure. But I think the bigger paydays of this contract.
You can still free up $8 million that way.
Yeah. He's 14, 17, and 16 against the cap this year versus 6 and 1 dead cap space. So next year, if you can keep him this year 14 against the cap, then next year for 17 against the cap, you're going to drop him and take your 1 million dead cap space. So he might be somebody who you can move. I mean, I think that if I'm like looking at the Cowboys situation, I do agree. I just don't know how good Sean Payton won 1 Super Bowl with a MVP quality quarterback. Mike McCarthy won 1 Super Bowl with an MVP quality quarterback. They both made the playoffs.
The Hall of Fame quarterbacks, both of them.
Yeah. Top the also rans with Brady and Manning are the 2 guys that those guys coached. I don't know how much was them and how much was the quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. So, I don't know that where I've talked a lot about sometimes the quarterback is good enough if they're not one of these top few guys. And sometimes coaches are good enough if they're not one of the top few guys, especially if they gel and they mix and the quarterback's young and the money's. I don't know for sure that Sean Payton is an Andy Reid or a Bill Belichick. He's real close. I mean, I think I prefer Tomlin over him. Looking at the course of coaches, I just feel Tomlin got more out of less for more years in a row and got another winning season this year. So I don't know if even Payton's the answer. Like, I think you got to get real lucky and find that stud who nobody knows is a stud yet. Like, you got to take a chance on maybe Bieniemy that nobody's been willing to take a chance on. But it's also hard to coach for this guy because he's involved in your team way too much. So, again, hopefully if you're a Cowboy fan, you get yourself a wide receiver that can be a game changer as a number 2, and you can move on.
Jerry Jones, the owner, should have fired Jerry Jones, the general manager, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
That's was and has always been the Cowboys' biggest problem. So, moving on to the games next week. Let's start with let's go right from there to the NFC Championship preview. That's the first game next Sunday. You know, we have Eagles 49ers in Philly.
It's just like I said before today, like I texted you guys, it's crazy that in a few weeks, either Mahomes has 2 rings or Purdy, Burrow, or Hurts has a ring. And so it's, we'll start with NFC 49ers visiting Philadelphia Eagles. I think these teams are very similar in terms of how styles of play, in terms of defenses, in terms of kind of not so much offense, because a lot of the offense in Philly is running kind of through Hurts. Brock Purdy's not running the ball, but their run game is superb in San Francisco. But I think for this game, I think the San Francisco 49ers have to play more of a great game to win than if the Philadelphia Eagles offense has to play up to, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think with Philly's defense, I think they're able to overcome an offense that would struggle more than I think a 49ers defense is, because we haven't seen this 49ers offense struggle yet. With this rookie quarterback and Brock Purdy going into this hostile environment, I think not that he's playing with house money, but I just think it's it's a situation where this Eagles team, I think, is going to be their favorite. I think they're favorite. What, like 2? What's the spread?
3 was the last
2,
one.
3. Okay,
It was 3 or 3.5 was the last one I saw.
Which shows that Vegas thinks of these teams on paper as very close. So I think, like I said, I think you do give the edge to Philly in this case. But I can see this being a defensive slug match. I can see this being 21-20, 23-22, something like that, where, it'll be you'll get some field goals. You might get one of these long where it's these rushing drives where it's just a lot of C-Mac and Jalen Hurts and a lot of some ground and pound. I think we're going to get a little bit of an old school game with this matchup. But I'm going to take the 49ers to win. I mean, no, I'm not. I'm not taking the 49ers. I want to.
Confused for a minute there.
No, I want to, but it's a heart pick. But my head, I'm going officially with the Philadelphia Eagles to win and advance to the Super Bowl.
One thing I know for sure about this upcoming game, the kicker situation is going to be a lot more solid. So we're probably not going to have many missed extra points on for this one. So, but you pretty much cover every point that I was going to be making. But so I'm just going to get right to it. I'm just going to give you my pick right now. I'm gonna pick the Eagles. The 49ers game against the Cowboys, they showed the weaknesses in that offense, and the Eagles have a much stronger defense than Dallas did. So while I'm expecting the 49ers to put up a similar score, I think the Eagles offense will find ways to crack through. As you mentioned before, it's like, yeah, CeeDee Lamb is great, and Dak was having a decent season, but I think Hurts and his receivers are a lot better. He has more targets to legitimately throw to. Mm-hmm. And while the 49ers defense was able to shut down Dak's best options, you try to shut down, say, like, you try to shut down A.J. Brown. Well, Smith's going to be open. You try to shut down both Smith and Brown. Goddard's going to be open.
You can run with Boston Scott.
Yeah, you can run with Boston Scott, or you can run with Hurts.
It's not the Giants.
Yeah, but it's the Eagles are going to face more resistance than they did against the Giants. But I think that between the two teams, the Eagles will be able to squeak through, and I think that we'll be seeing the Eagles in a Super Bowl again this year.
So I guess we're gonna reiterate some more. The big thing I think that Kyle's saying is the difference is that the Eagles offense is better than the Cowboys offense. Like, that is the big difference. And I think that's the big difference between all the three teams in the NFC. You have 3 stud defenses, but 1 good offense. You had a good offense, an okay offense, and we have a lot of weapons in the 7th-string quarterback. And I think that this is the game where Brock Purdy can't put up 20 points. He's got to get I don't think that they're only going to hold the Eagles to 19. You've said it. It's Devonta Smith is the difference between these two offenses. I mean, I think Goddard is better than Schultz, but they both have a weapon at tight end. I think A.J. Brown is better than CeeDee Lamb, but not that much. Like, I think either one on either team, you're going to see
that's a wash.
That's a wash. But I know Devonta Smith is better than the rest of the receiving core on the Cowboys, combining their best aspects of each of them. Like, right, when they didn't sign OBJ for the Cowboys, that's kind of like when you knew OBJ was hurt real bad because they needed that, and they went and got T.Y. Hilton. And I've never been a big fan of Galladay, anything other than the 3, let alone the 2. So you got Devonta Smith. And then I think Sanders is a better single back than both of the Cowboys backs combined. Mm-hmm. Plus you got Gainwell and Boston Scott. There's just enough weapons that Purdy is going to have to play quarterback on the other side against a defense that looked like they could stop any passing game last week. And by the way, picked up Lindell Joseph and Dominican Sue for this game, right? They went out and said,
Yep.
how do we stop the run? We're having to, I know. And Dominic Sue, who's going to tackle Purdy and then step on his neck for 15 yards, but Purdy's never going to be the same for the rest of his life because it's Dominic Sue. So, yeah, I like the Eagles a lot with my heart and my head here. I will say this. The only silver lining for me is if the Eagles lose and my other pick wins, I did take that other pick to win the Super Bowl before the playoffs started, so I can root for them wholeheartedly. But no, I think this is the Eagles game. But it's only 2.5, which basically means they're favored because they're the home team, and I think they're better than just being the home team. But maybe I'm riding the hype after beating up a less than stellar Giants team.
Yeah, and also another big difference for me is that the 49ers defense, I think, has come down a notch from last year. Yes, they're still very good, but they're not, as we saw with Dak and the Cowboys last week, they are very good, but they're not, but you can beat them. And the Eagles have enough weapons. I think they can. And with the Eagles defense will definitely be knocking around Brock Purdy a bit. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think that that's all four of us in agreement going with the Eagles here. I think that this will be a low scoring game, but I don't think that I think it's possible that the 49ers could break through, but I really don't see it, especially not in the link. Just for this is different than the Andy Reid teams that would get to the conference championship game playing at home every year and lose at home every year, which I think they did 3 years in a row at one point. I don't see that happening with this team. I think that it'll be a tough game, but I think that the Eagles do break through and get back to the Super Bowl here. So let's go to the AFC Championship game. We have the Bengals and Kansas City. This will be the 5th year. Speaking of Andy Reid conference championships, this will be not only the Chiefs' 5th year in a row. It'll be the 5th conference championship game in a row at Arrowhead or Geha or whatever they're calling the place now. But it's Arrowhead Stadium.
Imagine hosting every playoff game for 5 years. It's funny because you hear things like that, and it's like sitting here as a Jets fan, I cannot physically and intellectually imagine what it would be like to have a team that good that can host the playoffs, not a game, host all the playoffs for 5 years in a row.
I think the Jets have only hosted something like 6 playoff games in their entire history. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's less than 10.
It's mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling to me. That's also like Joe Burrow is already like the all-time Bengals playoff leader in every stat, which is crazy.
Yeah,
because between Boomer and Ken Anderson, they were there for over 30 years.
Yeah,
Brock Purdy has more playoff wins than Dak Prescott.
The Jets have more playoff wins than the
Mark
Cowboys
Sanchez
over the past 25 years.
Yeah.
Even though the Jets haven't made the playoffs for the past 12.
They made good use of their time in those 2 years. That's all right.
So,
I'll start with this game. AFC, we have a rematch between Burrow, Mahomes. I said a little while on a show, I think it's this next generation's Brady Manning. But I think Mahomes and the Chiefs are, like I said before, hell-bent on getting revenge on this team, getting back to another Super Bowl, and making amends of how they looked in their last Super Bowl up against Tampa, where they had a decimated offensive line and Mahomes was running around like a chicken without his head. And it really didn't look like the Chiefs. So I really think that they are so tunnel vision focused on obviously you got to beat this team to get to the next game. So right now they are all focused, Bill Belichick, we're on to Cincinnati. And I think this is going to be a great game. I think we're going to have a bit of more of an offensive explosion than it's an NFC counterpart game. And I think we're going to, around 30 points closer to that for these teams. but I think it's going to be another all-time matchup. I think they're going to go back and forth. You hope that Mahomes can go into this game with 100% health, and to really get the best out of both of these teams. But I expect the Chiefs to come out on top, get their revenge, and go back to a third Super Bowl in 5 years.
Okay, so Brandon going with the Chiefs. Kyle?
This is definitely a bit more of a toss-up game. It really depends on how well Mahomes is able to play with that high ankle sprain. It's if Mahomes was 100% healthy, I would go with Chiefs. But as we saw with the Bengals, they are playing like a team possessed. They basically had they just played a game against what basically the Bills were my original Super Bowl contender. So to me, the Bengals went beyond that. So, and against a hurt Mahomes, and while they do have a really good backup at Henne, Andy Reid's a fantastic coach, and their defense is still one of the tops in the league. The Bengals are playing like a team possession, and I think it would be really stupid to pick against them right now. So while I think that Mahomes is still going to be a quarterback for years to come, he's basically the next headline. He's basically the current top quarterback in the NFL right now. And I had Josh Allen as this in the top 5. And the Bengals just basically had a no stress game against the Bills in a situation, as you mentioned, that favored the Bills. So you know what? I gotta go. I gotta go picking the Bengals on this one.
Right.
All right.
Obi?
So I was, before this playoffs began, I just said Cincinnati. Put my money where my mouth was on my FanDuel. If my whole dollar, but that's my money. So the question is now, this Bengals offensive line is so beat up, and I do not want to make the same mistake I made with Cincinnati, thinking that Tampa Bay was going to lose to Kansas City when the offensive line was banged up. And if Patrick Mahomes did not have his ankle twisted in a way that looked like Dak Prescott's ankle from 2 years ago, I would be like, okay, this interior defensive line of Clark and Jones is going to rip up this offensive line because it's not going to be played in the snow. And they had the better defense, and this quarterback, who is the best quarterback in the game, is going to lead this team to victory. But I do not know who's going to be under center for the Kansas City Chiefs come Sunday. I just don't know. And at the end of this week, we are going to know who the best quarterback in the NFL is. I don't care who wins the Super Bowl. I don't care if it's Hurts goes out and beats the winner of that game. I don't care if Purdy goes out and beats the winner. The winner of this game gets to, for a year, carry around the title of best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I'm going against all of my football instincts, and I'm going to say the beat-up line is going to be good enough because the other quarterback is not going to be himself. So I'm taking Cincinnati, but boy, I understand why that game is only 1.5 versus the other game. Like this is great football for picking. I don't know what the games are going to look like, especially a defensive struggle game. Like you think it's going to be close, but sometimes those games, the turnovers start popping and it's 40-3. Like those games can be blowouts because one defense is so good and then they're just getting turnovers, so you just don't know what's going to happen over there. But this game, it's so hard because I picked my team, but boy, that's you didn't learn anything from the game in the snow. That's the real problem. I didn't learn what was going on with that offensive line. We will learn this week. And by the way, if that offensive line doesn't hold up, but Burrow plays amazingly, the defense from the other team, the NFC, is going to run through that offensive line. So that offensive line is important, not just to win this game, but to look good enough to hold off the next defense that's coming, whichever defense it is.
I do think that the equalizer is the Mahomes injury. With everything you guys said, with the Bengals line problems, which ended up being a moot point in the Buffalo game, versus a Mahomes where I gotta think if he plays, he's 50% at best. High ankle sprain, as I mentioned earlier in the show, usually you're out for 3-4 weeks at least. So to come back and play the next week from this against a team that the Bengals just did this last year. Usually the team that loses a Super Bowl has a hangover the next year, and they'll miss the playoffs. Sometimes have a losing record. The Bengals went out and did the same thing all over again, and they're right back where they were last year in Kansas City. And now the Chiefs don't even have a healthy Mahomes to do what a healthy Mahomes does. So this could be a shootout, but definitely I think that I just don't see. I picked against the Bengals last week and I was wrong. So I'm making up for my own mistake last week. I'm going with the Bengals this week.
Oh man, I'm a lone wolf here for Kansas City.
Maybe Scott will pick. Maybe Scott will share your thoughts, because Kansas City does have more targets to throw to for Mahomes than Joe Burrow does on the Bengals. Burrow has Chase and not much else.
But Chase is plenty.
Higgins and Boyd and
mm-hmm.
I wouldn't put them better than the auxiliary targets that the Chiefs have.
That's fair. But with Mahomes hurt, I think it doesn't really matter.
Mahomes hurt means that he can't move. So he's basically going to be an Eli Manning. And as we've seen, Eli Manning was able to succeed while having the movement of a turtle.
Yeah.
So
it's possible.
The thing is also Mahomes has the arm talent of both, the strength of both Mannings combined. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think we now see, by the way, based on Kyle's comments, where we differ on his view of Cincinnati. Because I think T. Higgins is the number one wide receiver in the NFL who's happy to play, who's been willing to play at number 2. And I think Boyd is a solid number 2 who's playing number 3. So I think after Kelsey, the next 3 best ball catchers are all on Cincinnati. So obviously now we see where some of Kyle's opinions about that Buffalo game differed than mine. Like I think that's, and I could be wrong. I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster is nothing to laugh at. MVS again. These are not guys who I'm laughing at. I just think that the better options are sitting on Cincinnati.
Okay. Fair. All right. So just to wrap up the NFL coverage for the week, we will see what happens. It should be two good ones. Brandon, you had an announcement you wanted to make.
Yes, I do. To take take this over to basketball. As you guys know, there is a topic in the basketball / NBA world that is, I should say, at the very least, a trigger for me. Gets me all hot and bothered, and that is the good old classic Jordan-LeBron debate. So I've really gotten to a point where I can't stand it anymore. What we've done to this Jordan legacy is absurd to me. It must be addressed. But it's no problem. I am doing the world a charity, a service here. I am solving this debate once and for all. So I will be putting together this very extensive, super detailed video presentation such as this, where I'll just lay it out all on the line. It's a dirty job. Someone's got to do it, but put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. So that'll be coming in the next few weeks. So sit tight for that.
So you're going
to settle.
Oh yeah. It's gonna
Goldie
be
guy?
a year. Oh yeah. Oh, I'm gonna have a whole. It's gonna be I'm gonna have binders, notes. I'm gonna have like 8 monitors. This is gonna be
Well,
like.
you have 27 8x10 color glossy photographs with a paragraph and a circle
Yeah.
on the back of each one.
I'll have a whiteboard. I'll have the lines. The Chris. I'll have it all. I will have it all. I am detective mode on, here to solve this crisis that has come across the basketball world. It's a virus, and it
I'm
needs
just
to
picturing
stop.
you like I'm just picturing Brandon like the scene from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the
Yeah.
Pepe Sanchez
Yes.
scene with the
Yes,
board
yeah,
and
yeah,
everything.
the whiteboard, well, the
Mad.
cork board with all the photos and the string and the push pins. I
Yeah.
was gonna say, you should set it up initially like the interview for The Decision.
I should.
What's Jim Gray
Just
up to
really
these days?
put in all the graphics, get this editing team up and hard. This is going to be some good stuff. Very, jokes aside, it is a topic that is very near and dear to me. Something that I've been wanting to do for a while. So I'm finally having the time to put that together, and very excited to do that.
Yeah,
Excellent.
just in time for LeBron to close in on Kareem's scoring record.
Exactly. A little bit of a timing, perfect situation there. So, yeah, very excited.
I'm going to make a suggestion to our esteemed leadership team that Brandon gets this recorded and we get it edited and we drop it the day after the record breaks.
Ooh.
I don't know who's in charge of making that happen, but that is my suggestion.
I know we're a mere like 400 points away. So I got
I think it was like 350 last I checked.
We got like 10 games.
350.
Yes, so it's probably
my window is closing, so I better jump on that because apparently
350. That's only like a month of games.
Apparently, Jordan's career and legacy is still ever changing, so I got a lot to keep up with here. So crazy, but yeah, very excited to do that. And something I've been wanting to do for a while.
I'm looking forward to it because I know
this
is a passionate topic for you, and you go off on this whenever it comes up. So I'm excited to see
the veins out of my neck. It's in the forehead. It's crazy. Gets me.
Shows his age every time he talks about it, though, don't he?
Oh no! This argument, this will be the most. It doesn't matter how old or young you are. This will be an ageless argument. Ageless, total objectivity, but LeBron's the GOAT. But total objectivity. All right, gents, that'll do it for me. I gotta sign off. I know you got Seton Hall stuff coming up. I will be back next week with you guys, as always.
All right.
Thank
you, Brandon. We'll see you next week. All right. And just for the last few minutes of the show here, we'll cover this week in Seton Hall. They had two nationally ranked opponents at home last week. They beat UConn in a shocker. They were ranked number 15 at the time. I haven't seen today's rankings to see if they're even in the top 25 anymore, but since they beat up Butler yesterday, I think they'll at least be ranked or just outside of the rankings. Then there was Saturday's game against number 20 ranked Marquette. Marquette is a terrible matchup for Seton Hall. That's now 4 straight losses. They lost by 21, 74-53 at home in this one. And it got kind of ugly. It was just not, there really wasn't much there from an offensive standpoint and defense. And it was just Shaka Smart's havoc is still, now 2 schools later from the VCU Final Four run, that's still how he rolls. It's a style of defense that throws teams off if they're not well prepared for. And Seton Hall was not prepared to the tune of 26 turnovers in the game. That's the most for Seton Hall in a game in 10 years. And Coach Holloway was understandably quite upset after the game, to the point where a question about the status of a player who, a completely out of nowhere question from a reporter during the press conference, asking about the injury status of a player who's missed the entire season for a knee injury. was the one poke that made him blow up, and I felt for him because I can relate to when you're having a bad day, just trying to get out of there, get home without ripping somebody's head off, and he didn't quite make it. And it was kind of tough to watch, but it ended up with a epic rant that I had to heavily edit to make printable for my article about the game. But this week the Seton Hall is a much needed bye week coming up. They don't have a midweek game. Their next game is Saturday the 28th at Hinkle Fieldhouse against Butler. Butler has not been very good so far this year, and they beat him handily once at home. Playing on the road is different, but also after this game, Seton Hall will be done with Midwest road trips. So they just have either home games or what I call the OG Big East teams in the road games. Villanova, UConn, St. John's. So they're now 12-9 and 5-5 in the conference, heading into the back half of the Big East schedule. Still not quite sure what this team is. I think that their NCAA talk is a little premature at this point, especially after how they got blasted by Marquette. But if they show promise, they could at least keep it. They could keep it interesting down the stretch. They could get themselves into the bubble conversation with a few other big wins, and maybe a run at the Garden in the Big East tournament. But as of now, I see an NIT team, which is fine for a new coach and all of the change that they had coming into this year and the up and down struggles they have. I think that would be fine. Also, the season could nosedive from here. I don't think that will happen, knock on wood, but it is a possibility. Ultimately, I think it's somewhere in the middle and probably an NIT berth, but just show promise coming into next year. Rutgers fell out of the rankings after their loss for Michigan State, but they're still having a good year. So Seton Hall still has that win in the rack as one of their big wins to count on the resume. Whether they stay close enough to get into that discussion, we shall see. Unfortunately, Villanova is not looking too great, but they appear to be staying above the dregs of the conference. Georgetown and DePaul and Butler, but we'll see. They play on the 11th. Anybody else have any basketball thoughts to add?
Just my usual Nova frustration.
I mean, I think that I've been starting to watch my Scarlet Knights a little more. I did see that unfortunate loss to Michigan State, but I have faith that the Scarlet Knights are going to hold up enough to make that win for Seton Hall useful to them. So, yes, they are playing well over New Jersey, having one of its best years in basketball in quite some time.
Rutgers is absolutely a tournament team if they keep playing this. They've put together a formula that works for the Big Ten. While I personally think the Big Ten is a little overrated, by doing as well in the Big Ten as Rutgers has, that gets you a tournament berth.
Yeah, I mean, this year out of nowhere, it's the Big 12 that has all the ranked teams. They have like 6 ranked teams at this point in the Big 12, even with Kansas State's loss. The Jayhawks losing this week. To
the Big 12 is the best conference in the country.
Yeah.
And Villanova is still trying to figure it out. I mean, I feel for any coach that comes in following a legend, it's tough, and there's people already calling for J. Red to come back, and just Kyle Neptune needs a few years to figure it out.
Unfortunately, that's going to cost them in terms of recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, J. Red was a special coach, though. I mean, that's
Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah, and as far as recruiting goes, recruiting now comes down to the NIL, the name, image, and likeness payments. Which has somehow morphed into which school can put together the most put together collectives to raise enough money to to pay the players for name, image, and likeness services. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
It's
Villanova has the money.
open.
Rutgers not so much. But also Rutgers might be able to pay the basketball team, but not the football team. So they got some good recruits that they signed this past week.
Given the size of Rutgers University, there are enough people you and I don't know by name with enough money to pay to keep a lot
Rutgers
of kids in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, right? We don't know all the Rutgers guys. But, you don't think if Pachenko gets a nice little signing bonus in the next couple of years, I mean, that's the guy you do know, or the McCourty brothers. But there's plenty of Rutgers alumni in a lot of fields that make a lot of money without you knowing their names.
Right.
Rutgers will be fine.
Yeah,
they'll be fine. The Rutgers issue is just like they're fine nationally, but compared to the rest of the Big Ten, they're on the bottom end of the scale, which is so it's still an uphill battle for Rutgers in that regard.
This is
I feel like Rutgers is
go ahead. Sorry.
It's putting its efforts into the other sports. Like it's saying, okay, we're in the Big Ten, and you're as a Rutgers fan, we're seeing great wrestling seasons, great women's sports and soccer and field hockey, women's basketball, the baseball team, the men's. Like I feel like they're taking advantage of the Big East money, and instead of saying, okay, let's chase football glory. I mean, they did bring back Shiano, but in general, instead of chasing football and basketball glory, get those teams representative enough and put money into the other sports and thrive that way from a sports culture. And I think that's working because, New Jersey State, high school state has very competitive sports and all sorts of things that they can lead into great success in other sports for local kids. Local-ish,
New Jersey high schools turn out a lot of football talent that goes elsewhere.
Yes, Bergen Catholic and Don Bosco and Camden Catholic, just tons that go.
They just don't go to Rutgers. They go to SEC and other Big Ten schools. Like the Big Ten kind of works against Rutgers in that way because they can go to Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, wherever. And the thing is, hey, I can come play in front of my family every other year.
Yeah. No, that is absolutely true. That's why the big sports. I don't know when Rutgers is going to really catch up in the Big Two, but the rest of the
men's
sports,
basketball they have. They've absolutely have caught up in men's basketball. I will give them that. They were garbage for decades, but they're now holding their own. This year was the first year going into the Seton Hall Rutgers basketball game that I thought, Seton Hall has no chance with how they've been playing. They ended up winning that, much to everybody's surprise. But going in, it was the first time that I thought Rutgers had on paper a clearly better team than Seton Hall did going into that game.
Which is amazing because there should have been a St. Anthony's to Rutgers tube for decades. I believe St. Anthony's finally closed down, but Coach Hurley's team. Yeah,
St. Anthony's closed down about 5 years ago. The old man Hurley is now living vicariously through his two sons that are college coaches now.
Right. Neither to the level of success that he had at St. Anthony's, but that was ridiculous levels of success.
Yeah, to the tune of almost 1,200 wins. All right, an hour and a half into this, let's. I think we're good to wrap this up. Thank you, Obi and Kyle, for helping me out with Scott not here. Thanks to Brandon, and we'll wrap this up. Thanks for checking us out. You can check out our website, streampunkent.com. Like and subscribe on YouTube on Streampunk Sports. Subscribe to our other channel, Streampunk Cinema. They have Tales from the Film Set coming up, I believe 8:30 or 9 o'clock coming up soon.
15 minutes.
So
we better wrap up quick.
They definitely need to get off of here so they can run that. Okay. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Take care and